Welcome to Choose the Nickel. I am your host, George Bailey. My co-founder and technical support is the ever-talented, ever-beautiful Christina Bailey. This podcast is about giving kids financial freedom. My wife and I love our 4 children and want to learn to prepare them more effectively for the adult world. So we're interviewing fascinating people for their insights about how children learn to be financially savvy. Our guests come from diverse, sometimes conflicting schools of thought, and we love the opportunity to learn from them. We encourage listeners everywhere to weigh our guests' ideas on how best to cultivate in children a healthy relationship with money. We invite you to visit our blog at www.choosethenickel.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our efforts to apply what we are learning on the podcast. Today's episode features Representative Andria Tupola. Andria Tupola currently serves in the Hawaii House of Representatives representing District 43 of the state. Andria was first elected into the House of Representatives in 2014 on her very first run for office. Following her re-election in 2016, Andria made history by becoming the first Samoan woman to serve as the House Minority Leader, a position she continues to serve in today. Andria Tupola formerly taught music at Leeward Community College. She has earned 2 degrees in music education, an MA from the University of Hawaii Manoa and a BM from Brigham Young University, and is currently completing a PhD, also in music. Andria is an honors graduate of Kamehameha School's Kapalama and is an avid fan of both sports and the performing arts. She enjoys spending time with family, especially her husband and their 2 daughters, aged 9 and 10. Andria is now running for governor of the state of Hawaii. She's a delight to talk to. Ladies and gentlemen, Representative Andria Tupola. Representative Tupola, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. So I've got to ask, you're the first Samoan woman to serve as the minority leader of the Hawaii House of Representatives. Your own father was the first Samoan judge in the United States of America. These are 2 incredible achievements, and I wanted to ask what that means to other people of Samoan descent in Hawaii and elsewhere, do you think?
Well, I definitely think it's a good thing. You know, the congresswoman from American Samoa, her name is Aumua Mata Raidwagon. She was elected in 2014 as well, and she's the first woman to ever be a congressperson for American Samoa. And for our culture, it is a huge thing for a woman to be a leader, and we're entering, a generation of many women getting engaged in the workforce that have young children, that own businesses. So I think it's awesome for our people to see Polynesian women coming out and doing this, and as well, just having a voice for Polynesians that may be American Samoan, maybe they're from Western Samoa, but we have so many people here from different Polynesian nations that it feels great to be a voice for Polynesians throughout the Pacific.
It's got to be really exciting to be a voice for that. It looks like that in 2014, when you first ran for the Hawaii House of Representatives, you received about 56% of the votes against your incumbent or the incumbent who had served for 8 years. What was your strategy? That was a big achievement.
Yeah, running as a non-politician, as kind of an interested community member that wanted to serve, I really didn't know that it was a difficult feat to unseat an incumbent. I didn't really think, there's a certain political party that's stronger than one other. I was just like, I'm getting out there, I'm getting active. For me, it was a numbers game. I knew that I needed to get 3,500 votes and that I had a clipboard. It had the number on top of how many votes I needed in every precinct, and I just kept walking the streets until I hit my number.
Wow. Awesome. What were some of your favorite experiences in talking with people, getting to know them?
One of the experiences I had was that I was wearing a t-shirt and shorts and a hat because, it's hot in Hawaii. So I thought I'm going to get ready and get out and, knock doors. And so I took a picture with me and somebody, and a few other candidates talked to me and they said, "Are you knocking doors in t-shirts?" I was like, "Yeah. Well, what are we supposed to wear?"
Not just, but heck yeah. Awesome.
They said, "You're supposed to wear a suit and a lei." I was like, wait, why would I wear a suit to knock doors? It's so hot. And why would I wear a lei? Like, who wants to see somebody at the door with a lei on? I was like, no, I just wanted to get to know people in my community. So that was a funny one. Another one that I had when I knocked the doors, they asked me what my platform was. And I didn't even understand what that was. I was just like, what's the platform? They're like, what are the things you're going to fight for? I was like, oh, well, I ran because I wanted to serve the community, so I should listen to you. Do you have any ideas? And she's like, so you came to me to ask me for ideas. I was like, yeah. I said, I want to hear what you have to say because, I think that community members know better than the government. So I want to collect information as I knock doors, and I don't want to come overly decisive in my approach. I want to allow for community input. And people are like, wow, this is great. I was like, yeah.
The way it's supposed to be done. I love that. I love that. Speaking of, knocking doors in suit and tie, I remember riding my bike in a suit and tie, and that is a horrible experience. So props to you for the brilliant idea of dressing like a normal human being out there in the streets of Hawaii. I think that's great. And now here you are running for governor. What's kind of your feeling about that?
Definitely intense, meaning that every time I speak or I interact with community members, I start to feel the weight of what it means to run a state. The issues and problems that we have here in Hawaii are not small, from homelessness to insufficient funding for foster care to inadequate numbers of social workers on certain rural areas to years of buildings from the Department of Education that just haven't been kept up to date. So there's so many issues. And of course, I'm a very optimistic person. I always think that all things are possible. But sometimes looking at some of these issues, I'm like, wow, how can I really do this? Like, I know I want to, and I know Hawaii needs a type of leader that can be collaborative and community minded. But I always say when I speak at places that this is a very grassroots campaign for a reason, is that I do not think that our government can solve these issues on their own, and I'm going to need everyone's help to get this done. So that's how I would describe it, is that there is a weight to this type of calling. There's a weight to this path that I'm taking, and I can feel it as I go from island to island and speak with communities of people that feel very underserved and feel very disenchanted with what the government has been providing.
You mentioned that you're a pretty optimistic person. Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I'm a music teacher, so my degree is in choral education. I love singing. And so typically as a singer, you project everything from your feelings to your inadequacies to your insecurities. And so I, for years, have been coaching voices of people, and I coach them and try to give them confidence. I try to build them up, because you can't be a professional singer or even a choir member and have doubts about yourself. So I feel like for me, optimism comes from my ability to really bring out my voice and just accept the fact that I have a distinct voice. Whether people like or hate where I stand, I'm very transparent and I'm very outspoken about why I decide to do the things that I'm doing. And I own it, and I'm happy about it, and I know that as a politician, it gets super difficult because I have a lot of colleagues that do not like to make their stances known because they don't want people not to like them. But I always say you can only succeed in life if you're proud of every part of who you are.
Your mother was also a very wonderful person. She was the Hawaii Mother of the Year in 2004. How did that influence you?
So she's been a self-employed business owner since I was 4 years old. She wanted to be at home with us, so she started her own music studio. She teaches voice and piano. Then she got her master's degree when I was in elementary school. And then when I was in high school, she went back and got her PhD while we were in school. As a mother, you don't necessarily look to get awards like that, but it's nice to see when your mother does get acknowledged for all her efforts.
That's great. And you said that her work when you were a kid was that she ran a music studio. Do you remember any specific times that you watched your mom and thought okay, wow, that's how it's done?
Well, she does regular recitals for piano and voice. And so I think watching her make the programs, set up the chairs, and then rent the piano, go down to the elementary school, set up the refreshments, send out the notices to all the parents that they needed to be at this event. So I kind of saw her do all of the intricate parts of the operation, and I was super impressed because being a musician and then being able to execute a recital for at sometimes between 60 and 70 kids, I just think watching it now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, that's definitely where I got some of my traits from. It actually makes you a very well-rounded person.
That's awesome. I can relate to that. You know, I grew up with music and it was a very big part of my life. It took me a while to really understand the behind the scenes work that goes into a large production. Do you think that observing that and being so closely associated with that has made you a better leader?
Oh, definitely. I have to often remind myself that I'm at a fundraiser because I always think I'm at a concert. So whenever people come to my events, they're like, this is like the most amazing political event I've ever been to. I was like, yeah, because this is a concert. Because I have some of like the top artists in Hawaii come and they're super fun. At one of my events, I had it at like a club in Honolulu. It's like a bar. My brother is a DJ. So he DJ'd, he had his rap group come out and people are like, yeah, this is so awesome. And I was like, yeah, this is a Republican fundraiser. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm running for office. They're like, you're running for office? This is super fun. I was like, yeah, everything I do is super fun.
I love this.
So
running for office shouldn't be fun. You got to wear a shirt and a tie and go out and sweat on the street and be miserable with people and hide your point of view. So...
Yeah, I asked one of my friends that went to a political fundraiser for some of my colleagues, and I said, how was it? Like, well, they're all well attended. I was like, are they fun? And he was like, well, it's not a production. Everyone who comes knows that they're there because they're lobbyists. They're trying to get their bills heard. They come because so-and-so is the chair of this committee. And so everyone just pays their checks off who they're paying for, has a few drinks, sits around and leaves. I was like, oh, because like my events are like productions.
Yes.
When people come, they're like, whoa, that was so good. I was like, right? The entertainment was on point. And of course, people come because they want to hear me speak. People are like, man, this is so refreshing. And again, I attribute it to the fact that I've never been to a political event, so I don't know what it's supposed to be like. So I just make it as comfortable for myself as possible and as friendly and music oriented as possible.
Here you are talking about like, you know, approaching politics in a fresh manner, you know, one that is not so constrained by some of the traditions that we put into it. Do you think that we do that to our kids sometimes, that we, you know, tell them this is the way you do things? This is the way it's done.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think for me, I have such a hard time with that. And you can ask my parents this all the time. I am such a rebel. Like even when my mom was teaching me, I wouldn't even allow her to do it. Like I constantly wanted to teach myself. So my mom would sit me down and I had already picked out my own songs. I had my own stuff ready. And she's like, are you going to take any directive from me? I was like, well, you can try. I said, but I picked this music and this is why I did this. And so she would go wash dishes. And then from another room, she'd yell out, wrong note. And I'd fix myself and keep going. And so I feel like my parents were always trying to like explain to me like a way to go, but in my, I guess, free, creative, unrestrained, organic mind, I wanted to do it like my way. Like I wanted to do it in a way that I thought was right. And so that's the same way that I've approached this whole running for governor thing, is that so many people are like, Andrew, you need to speak like this. You need to wear this kind of clothes. This is the kind of message you should be portraying. These are the mailers and this is what they should look like. And I'm like, I appreciate all of the historic knowledge that people share with me, but I also have to be true to who I am. So
yeah. What would you say were some of the more motivational experiences to you when you were young?
In regards to my grandfather, and this is probably a very unique experience that most kids don't get to go through, but my grandfather was the grandmaster of Kempo karate, and I didn't understand too much about that when I was young. I was maybe 7 or 8 when I first started flying to California. So every summer we would go to LA. That's where my grandfather lived. He was the head of the Long Beach Kempo karate tournament. And so it was at the Long Beach Arena, which many people have been to in California. And every year we'd go in the summer, and it was a 2-week tournament. My mom and dad would fly up. Everyone in the family was tasked to do something, whether it was selling T-shirts, collecting tickets, running booths, helping to do scorecards for the kata competition. Everyone had a job. So we were all there, all of the family members. They had boxing, kata, karate. They had demonstrations. Chuck Norris got his first big break there. Bruce Lee, if you watch Dragon, Bruce Lee's big incident that happened in the movie The Dragon happened at my grandfather's tournament.
Okay, I'm going to go watch it right now. That is too cool.
In the movie The Dragon, my uncle plays my grandfather in it because Bruce got in that fight with the guy at my grandfather's tournament. It was a big deal, and we were young. We were there. And then a lot, like all of these things happened because my grandfather decided to teach karate to movie actors. Like that's how this all happened.
Okay.
So
Okay. Wait. So your grandfather was at least a major player in teaching or getting kind of, oh, that is just, I'm sorry, but that is super cool. Because
so
like whenever that's incredible. What I love about that is that that's such a big thing to us now. I mean, every action movie is influenced
has karate, right?
in some way. Yeah, it's influenced in some way by that. That's incredible. What a great legacy you've got.
So the Pink Panther, the original Pink Panther, my grandfather's in that. He's one of the bad guys. And the Green Hornet, he helped Bruce do some of his his scenes as far as how to do it in the movie so that you could fake it but still do it. And so that whole experience of watching my grandfather and like this building this huge empire off of this thing that he didn't think, well, he was told, people told him, like, this is ridiculous. Nobody's going to want to see karate movies. Nobody wants to see. Yeah, that's what he was told. And later, towards the end of his life, he was the bodyguard for Elvis Presley because Elvis was really into karate. So Elvis and him, before he died, he went to a few of his concerts with his bodyguard because Elvis really wanted my grandpa always by him. But my grandpa was super busy. He couldn't just hang out and go to all of his concerts. So he did a few of them. And of course, they were good friends because Elvis was just like enamored by karate. He loved it. If you look at any of his guitars, he always had my grandpa's patch on his guitar, and he gave my grandfather one of his capes and bought him cars. So I guess I'm sharing this as one of these experiences that I had when I was young, seeing this kid who's from Hawaii. He was a Hawaii boy that was raised in public housing, go from that to doing karate in movies and being Elvis Presley's bodyguard. That means anybody can do it.
That's great. And I think you're right. It's surreal in a way to watch people close to us do these incredible things. And it can be very influential on a child to have that experience. I'm kind of wondering how, we can each reproduce that. Part of it, I think, is in making sure that we share with our children those stories of our family, like being aware of those family stories that we can share with them so that they have a sense of like, this is my identity. And it sounds to me like you had that same takeaway, like, okay, this is my identity. Maybe not like a karate master per se, but somebody who could totally do the thing that no one, that everybody says, no, you shouldn't do. Would you say that that's true?
Exactly. Everything that people tell you that, no, you shouldn't do this. People are like, Andria, you have no political experience. You don't know anything about, Democrats, Republicans. You don't know what a platform is. You've never fundraised in your life. You don't have law background. Everybody was like, this is a horrible idea. Even my dad was like, are you sure? I was like, I feel like I need to do this, Dad. I'm going to step up. He's like, well, you think through all your decisions well, so you must have thought through this. And I said, I did. And, he was like, well, we need better leaders, so do it. And of course, when I won, people were like, how did she do it? I was like, because I felt like inspired to do it. And I knew that this was what I needed to do. And I was so committed to winning my first time. People said, well, you better be prepared to lose. I was like, oh, I don't do things to lose. Never. Yeah. Like, I'm doing it because I'm going to win the first time and I'm going to change this all up. Of course, once I got elected, I was like, oh, this is so hard.
No, I hear you on that. I hear you. But, there's something really important that I hope a lot of people take away from what you're saying professionally. And that is sometimes people who flock to those nonprofits to be board members typically come from one or two different professions. And it always kind of bums me out not to see more people coalesce around that cause from other professions. Like Money Smart School of Finance for Children. It's one that I sit on the board of directors for, or have in the past. I'm an advisory board member. Many of the people that we have are financial professionals, and that's great. But every once in a while, I love seeing people who are plumbers or whatever, teachers or something else, engineers step in and get involved. And the reason why is because they bring a perspective to these movements that is so necessary. I feel like your story says something about the mentality that we need to have. Like, I would love to see more politicians who have backgrounds that are varied, so that they understand the way in which their policies and whatnot impact their constituents.
Yep. People say that all the time to me, like, you're such a breath of fresh air. We're so glad that you bring different perspective. And I appreciate when people say that, but at the same time, when I work within a system where they reject that, it's super hard. It's super difficult because, of course, everyone on the outside is like, this is great. But everyone on the inside is like, who is this imposter? Like, who is this person that thinks that they can flip over this system? Like,
yeah. Yeah. So going back to your childhood a little bit more, we're going to talk a little bit about money. And a lot of what you've touched on is very relevant, I think, to helping kids adjust to the professional world in terms of courage, outspokenness. Music, I think, is a great gift to any kid who wants to better understand this world and better be able to associate and relate to people. But what about money? Do you have any memories of what your perceptions of money were like when you were growing up?
So I was born in Kahuku, which is on the north side of this island, at a community hospital, which people are always shocked when I say I was born there because it's very tiny and actually people do not give birth there anymore. And then I was raised in Makiki, which is a very low-income area of the island. My father was in law school. And I do actually remember this one time thinking, this is such a cool table. We had this little table in our family room. And then when I was in high school, I was like, wait, that table in our family room was the wheel that they used to wrap wires for electricity. And my dad's like, yeah. He's like, we got it from outside. I was like, oh, because it was like really cool. It looked like a large spool. Like I thought it was a spool of thread. I didn't know it was like an electricity wire wrapper thing. I was like, oh. And so we were, the mom and dad were both in school. He was finishing law school. My mother was trying to work, but also had kids pretty young. My mom gave birth to my brother when she was 19. She had me when she was 20. So when I was 5 years old, we ended up moving to Hawaii Kai, which is a pretty affluent area of this island. But at that time, it was just a new community. So my grandfather had put down the down payment for our house, wanted my mom and us to live in a good neighborhood. And that's how we ended up moving there. So those are like my first thoughts. It's not like we live like paycheck to paycheck, but definitely because Hawaii is a very expensive place to live. My parents were working all the time.
Did it mean a lot to you for your grandfather to be able to step in and help? And was that something that you understood at the time to be a big deal?
I didn't. I just remember that my cousins and some family members made comments about the fact that we were moving to a very upscale area. I didn't understand what it meant, but people are, oh, you're moving to Hawaii Kai. And I thought, what's so bad about this place? I think it's pretty nice, but we were young. And I just thought, well, we have a house, I had 3 brothers by that time. And so it seemed like, pretty necessary to live in a house so that we could make it as a family. But now, because I'm a homeowner, me and my husband bought a house when we were 30 years old, which we never thought we'd be able to buy a home in Hawaii. It's such a big deal. And I tell my kids that too. I'm like, there are so many families that aren't able to live in a home that they own until they're very old, or else they live in a home that their parents own or their grandparents. And so I feel like very, very fortunate that my parents set that example, that at a young age, the first priority was to get us into a home. We had very beat up cars. My mom and dad had matching Volkswagen Bugs, and there was like rust in the bottom of the car. Mm-hmm. And you could see the road from like where you sat. You could see down into the inside the car. But my dad was in law school, so we weren't trying to get fancy stuff. So even though we had a home, we still had to, I guess, cut back on our expenses in other areas. But it was so important for them that was like the first thing that they purchased for our family.
So when you were driving in cars, was this like the pre-seatbelt days, or, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just remembered I was a kid, like, my parents would stuff us and everything under the sun into our little hatchback. And I remember times riding in the back, like in the back of this hatchback, no seatbelt, just sitting there. And they would tell me like, hey, duck your head, a cop's coming, so you're looking down at the ground through your Volkswagen Beetle. Did that ever scare you?
Yeah, there's just some rust spots that rusted out the car so you could see the ground. But my mom and dad were both in school. And so my mom was finishing her bachelor's. My dad was doing his law degree. And I remember that me and my brother would be in the back seat. we'd be strapped into our, our booster chairs or whatever. And my mom would meet up on the street with my dad. We would jump out of her little Volkswagen Bug, get in my dad's Volkswagen Bug, and then go with him to class. Then we'd sit there, and then he'd meet up with my mom. Then we'd jump out of his Volkswagen Bug, get in her Volkswagen Bug because he had to go to work. She had to take us home. So that's all I remember. I just remember jumping back and forth from the two bugs and like putting on, getting in our little seats and like, where are we going, Mom? We're going to class. What are we doing there?
So were you sitting in his class?
Yeah, we would sit in class with my mom, and she would put like Michael Jackson on, and then we put on the headphones, and then we just like sit there and like listen.
Yes.
And we wouldn't make any noise. We just listened to like Thriller and like everything. We loved it. Like we come home, my mom had to teach piano. She would sit us right next to her while she taught piano, put the headphones on. We'd sit there and listen to Michael Jackson while she taught her students, and we'd draw. So.
I don't know if Michael Jackson would help my kids stay calm. I know that they would be singing it out loud. How did you resist?
Oh my gosh, we love Michael Jackson so much.
So do I. He's one of my favorites. Yeah.
We used to watch that Michael Jackson movie like over and over and over again. Like we were just in love with it. And a lot of it is because my mom would always put on the Michael Jackson, put on the headphones, and she's like, come on, kids, let's go. Yes, let's listen to Michael Jackson.
And so do you remember any experiences growing up where you started to really become familiar with the world of business and money? I mean, where it really dawned on you kind of what was happening around you?
I would say it was much later in my life. When I was on my mission in Venezuela, I was 20, 21 years old. Then I really became aware of society. I became aware of governments, philosophies, and I know that's kind of a very late time in life to become aware to that. But because my mother was an artist, when I was growing up, all I remember was choir practice. We were constantly at choir practice. I mean, if I wasn't singing alto, my mom had me singing tenor, or I was playing flute, or she told me jump on the piano and accompany her. And so all I remember was a lot of music. Even though my dad was a lawyer, I don't remember us having conversations about law around the table or about who got arrested. We were always talking about concerts. We were talking about where are we singing at? Where are we going? Did you learn your part? Have you been practicing piano? Did you get ready for your flute lesson? Because I was in ballet, I was in gymnastics, I was in drill team. I had took private flute lessons. I had piano lessons, voice lessons. Like my mom had me in like every art possible. So when I was in Venezuela, I remember thinking to myself, like, what in the world is going on here? Like there's no order. There's this thing called socialism that they practice there that I didn't know what that was. Hugo Chavez was the president. It was very, very much like a oppressed protesting environment where people would break out into riots at any time. They had all kinds of vulgar words spray painted all over the wall about Americans and what they're doing to us. And it was just crazy. It was the first time that I was like, man, we live in a really, really good place. Like we don't have people walking around with guns, and we don't have issues with lawlessness. And it just made me really grateful for what we have in America. And of course, for the place that I lived at in Hawaii.
Yeah. So any advice for parents now?
Sometimes I feel like it was good and bad. I mean, good that I didn't know all of these evils in the world because I could just do what I needed to do to get my degrees, to learn more about music. But at the same time, now that I'm adult, I look back and I think there were so many things going on in Hawaii. There were some sovereignty protests. There's a lot of different things that were happening that I was totally clueless. And now that I'm learning about it, and people, I mean, they literally sit me down and be like, hey, if you're going to run for governor, you better start studying history. I'm like, I know, gosh. I missed like years of history because I was unplugged to the world. So I would say that my kids are growing up so different than the way I grew up. They come to the Capitol. They see me debate on bills. They see me on the news almost every single night. I go to their school and people are like, we saw you, Mom. And my kids are so much more civically aware. Like they ask me like, Mom, why are people not cleaning the community? Mom, why do we have taxes here? How come people aren't doing here? Why did the mayor say that one thing on the TV? I was like, I never asked those kind of questions when I was 9 or 10 years old. Yeah. My kids are very aware. Yeah, very aware. And I think it's a good thing.
You can't see my face right now, but I'm beaming because a lot of what you're saying resonates with me. I grew up very oblivious. Just kind of, I was an innocent kid. I went out and I did kid stuff and I listened to music and I was involved in music as well. I didn't have a grandfather that, did Kempo karate, but I think I probably wished I had, and then I look at my own kids, and because I'm making a more concerted effort to be more engaged and to communicate, those things to them, naturally, I think that we don't want to necessarily overwhelm our kids, burden them down with heavy things of the world. But at the same time, we also want them to be aware. And, do you think that that is something that parents ought to strive for?
Oh, definitely. I think the main thing that I tell my children and what I try to communicate to them is that I don't need my kids to be politically active, but I do need them to be civically engaged. Like, if they don't want to get into politics or whatever, that's fine, but they need to be serving their community. And I tell them that all the time. Do you see how much mom is out there? Do you see mom cleaning, fixing parks, painting buildings, fixing school locker rooms, getting uniforms for the kids and shoes? And, my kids are like, yeah, mom, you do so much. I said, see, every community member can get more engaged, not just representatives, but everybody can serve more. And, of course, my kids throw attitude because they're young kids. I tell them, okay, we're going to a service project. They roll their eyes. Oh, what do we have to do? But as soon as we're finished, they always tell me, that was such a great experience, Mom. It was so nice to give and help other people. And the people we helped were so happy. That's what I want my children to remember, is that public service is about serving the public. So it's not about having positions and posturing and raising money. It is truly about thinking about other people first and thinking about yourself last.
On that same topic, what is your favorite charitable cause?
Oh, gosh, it has to be something music related. I started a nonprofit back in 2011, and I started collecting instruments and shipping it to schools because I knew there was a lot of schools that didn't have access to expensive instruments. And so, yeah, anything music related or arts related, I'm all about it.
That's wonderful. I'm the same. Is there a specific organization that you're just very passionate about?
I wouldn't say that I have one. In our state, Aloha United Way, that's the name of the nonprofit. They're probably the biggest nonprofit, and their specific goal is to help with homelessness and services. So now that I'm kind of out of the music world, probably the biggest cause that I'm engaged with is with homeless individuals. I really do a lot of outreach in my community. I've been really trying to be active with a lot of the churches about making sure to fill the gap, as opposed to duplicating or replicating services that are out there. So I would say that, I haven't contributed to Aloha United Way, but definitely it's one of the main organizations that's been fueling our community with the homeless services that we need.
Now, that's the second or third time that you've mentioned homelessness as being something that you do feel passionate about. Have you had any specific experiences with the homeless that have helped inspire you to get engaged in this cause?
Well, I'll share one experience, especially because you brought up my children and kind of their view on it. So 2 Christmases ago, I had brought up to my family, hey, for Christmas, let's go do a service project. So, of course, my family's like, yeah, let's do it. I said, let's go sing Christmas carols, because all of us sing, all of us. Mm-hmm. My brothers, my mom, we love harmonizing together. So they said, oh, yeah, let's go sing. So then I said, let's go to the homeless encampment. Oh, gosh, you should have seen their faces. Everyone's like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, so I have quite a few in my district, but there's one specific that I want us to go to. I think it would be a good experience. So immediately my mom's like, well, we can't bring any of the kids with us. It might be dangerous. I was like, Mom, I go there on a regular basis and I bring my children with me. She's like, you've taken the girls there? I said, Mom, there are other children there and it's not as dangerous as you think. I go there on a regular basis and I give service. It's going to be fine. And then, of course, silent protest from my brothers, like, oh, it's not a good idea, whatever. And then I said, do you guys remember? And then I mentioned somebody's name. And they're like, yeah, we remember her. She grew up with us. I said, she lives at the encampment. And they were like, what? Wow. I said, yeah. I said, I went there and I found her. I had no idea she was living there. She didn't want to disclose to me what happened or how she got there. She just wanted me to help her. And I said, yes, no judgment. I don't need you to explain any of the backstory. And so immediately my whole family just changed their whole complex, and everyone's like, we need to go. I said, exactly. And that's the truth about homelessness, is that it can happen to any of us. So once you realize that the people that are homeless are your brothers and sisters, are your uncles and aunties, are your classmates, are the people that grew up with you, you start to change your tune as to what you would be willing to do for them.
That is a very wonderful message, and I think we should end on that note. I want to thank you again, Representative Tupola.
Thank you so much, George. It's been a great honor to be with you. Take care.
You too. Have a great day. Everybody else, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the interview and found useful ideas about things you can do with your kids. Be sure to check the show notes at www.choosethenickel.com for links to names, books, and other resources we discussed in today's show. Also, please subscribe to our newsletter and visit our contact page where you can give us feedback. We invite you to share Choose the Nickel with your friends and join us in our quest to give kids financial freedom.